Purpose broadcast. As you see, I have a very special guest with me who I will introduce here shortly. Before we get to that, I want to make sure that you all have not forgotten about the Let's Talk Youth Summit. So, for the last few weeks, we have been talking about certain topics that have to do with sexual purity and sexual healing. And tonight we have a phenomenal testimony about sexual healing and how we can heal and turn sexual pain into real purpose in our lives. And so if you have not registered yet, I want you to stop what you're doing. No, never mind. I'll take that back. Don't stop what you're doing. You finish this broadcast and then you go register at letstalkyouth.org. This year we have some awesome activities. It's a virtual conference. Parents, you can host it in your home for your teens. Churches, you can host it in your location. Community organizations we're partnering with this year, Boys and Girls Club, et cetera, et cetera. You can host it in your community organization. It's going to be on a platform called Excel Events, which makes it very interactive. You can talk with other youth and young adults from across the country. You can ask questions to our panelists and speakers. You can learn about so many different things through this platform. And so I am so excited about what we are doing this year. When you come on, just go ahead and holler at me. Let me know that you're listening. Thank you for tuning in, Lindsay. We appreciate you coming on here tonight. What I want to do is I want to introduce our very special guest, Miss Jocelyn Cooper. Miss Jocelyn Cooper works for the Unique Foundation, and their motto is heal the one, protect the many. Miss Cooper has a phenomenal story. We'll learn a little bit more about that. She is doing so much in our community. She is in the greater Atlanta area, but she travels all over, impacting young people and helping young people turn their pain into purpose. And so I want us to give a warm welcome to Miss Jocelyn Cooper. How you doing, Joss?
I'm good. So glad to be here this evening. All I can say is thank you for this space and opportunity. I love to share my story just for the sake of, I consider myself an advocate for the advancement of women, the advancement of healing, and especially in all communities, but especially in communities of color. And so I just thank you for the space and opportunity to be able to share and just have a conversation and, chat it up with you about, what's happening and how that will impact the lives of youth and young adult who will eventually become, young women, young men, young they persons. Very important.
We appreciate you. I mean, I know you're busy. We were talking offline about how crazy things have been for you. And so I don't want you to take this lightly. You're sacrificing for us and spending your valuable time. So thank you again. Let's go ahead and dig right in. You've got such a powerful story, so much positivity to share. Do you mind letting our listeners know about where your passion comes from? Give us a little bit of your history and how you got here.
Sure. So I'm a Georgia peach, for real.
ATL.
Not a import, but I absolutely just love people and helping them identify their purpose from the place of abandoning the box. We so often put ourselves and place ourselves in boxes, unintentionally submitting to the circumstances of life and what happened to us. And so this is really something that I'm very, very passionate about because of my own personal experiences as a survivor of childhood and adolescent sexual abuse. It's unfortunate that I experienced it several times at the hands of several different people, but I don't wallow in it from a place of I have chosen to identify what was going on at some point later in life, and then utilizing that as a milestone or stepping tool to just move forward with life, to really empower and help the voices of others, because I know that so many individuals have, been through this. When we talk about the stats at the Unique Foundation, 1 in 4 girls before the age of 18 will be a survivor of childhood or adolescent sexual abuse. What we don't recognize is that's the reported numbers. So I'm not in that number. I'm not in that number. My sisters aren't in that number. Some of my friends aren't in that number. And so it's important to recognize that this is happening more frequently than we realize. And so it's so important that we, like you're doing tonight, provide a space and opportunity for individuals to really have a platform to share whatever's happening with them, what has happened to them, so that they can feel comfortable with moving forward in their healing journey, or whether they're getting it started or continuing in it. There is a next after any type of abuse. I always say we're all survivors of something.
Jocelyn, that is so good. I want to make sure our listeners caught that. Are you saying that reportedly 1 out of every 4 women have experienced sexual abuse, and that is only the reported number?
That's the reported numbers.
So is it safe to say that the numbers may be closer to 2 out of 4?
Yeah, I mean, the statistics generally focus on, so we have an entire education and research department at the Unique Foundation, just like so many other organizations. And this is always a number, whether you're talking about 1 in 6 boys before the age of 18 or 1 in 4 girls, it's always a number that's kind of like up in the air. But what we all know is that it's always more than whatever you see. Whatever number you're seeing in that presentation, it's always more than that, because those numbers only will impact the reported numbers. And so that's definitely something to just be mindful of, not from the place of, we definitely don't want to fearmonger, just so you can be informed. And so you'll know how to move forward for sure.
You said something that was good. And you said the healing journey. I want you to expound on that, because oftentimes we think healing occurs in a moment. And what I believe that does, Jocelyn, is it causes us to lose hope. It makes us look down on ourselves because we're not where we think we should be. And so your healing has definitely been a journey. It's a journey that we celebrate now. It's a journey that we see impacting and inspiring a lot of different people as you do what you do. But can you talk a little bit more about that journey of healing, and let our listeners know what that looks like?
Absolutely. So in truth, and I just want to offer a quick trigger warning, that be mindful that some of the information I'll share, it's going to be the headlines and not the details, but I want people to, be mindful and take care of themselves. Take a moment, step out if you need to, as I share some information. But I just want to share the raw and honest truth so people can get a holistic picture. But my violations begin so early that I don't remember some of them. And I spent most of my life as a child angry and upset and at times bitter. My sophomore year of high school, they did a superlative type situation, which is rare for sophomores anyway, but someone came up with the idea, and I was voted worst attitude. I'm talking about like worst attitude. And now I can't even be mad at them now. I was angry then.
Right.
But in hindsight, I look back on it and I say, who would I have been? By God's grace, I'm a lot of awesome things and able to engage with so many great people. But who would I have been if someone had seen that brokenness in the 15-year-old girl and it's labeling her someone with a bad attitude, just asking, what's wrong? How are you feeling? How are you doing? And listening after they ask the questions. So for me, I just held everything inside. Culturally, I knew that there was a lot of abuse in our families because my elder sisters had experienced some same things. I didn't even feel that I had the right to a degree to share. I felt like, oh, their situation was way worse and graver than mine. Let me not say much. So I spent time just internalizing this. So there's a great book that we just kind of recommend often for reading for individuals. It's called Body Keeps Score. And
Body Keeps Score.
Mhm. Body Keeps Score. It's a great book that talks about the trauma of surviving, childhood abuse, childhood sexual abuse, and how that even if you feel like you're pressing and pushing, which is so often culturally to some degree what we're told to do, like we are triumphant and yes, we are more than conquerors, but we have to partner the practical with the spiritual. I did not do those things, and hence the bitterness set in. And so for me, it wasn't until I started healing slowly but surely, like in college, because I had an opportunity to detach from the environment that often, if in my honesty, was complicit in some of my abuse as a child. Family members and relatives that I love still sat quiet, didn't discuss it. Let's not talk about it, things of that nature. And so that helped being separate, during undergrad to go away. But even
Jocelyn,
after,
can I ask you a question really quick?
Sure.
Is that where your anger came from? You mentioned how angry you were, and then you mentioned, certain people who I would think were, people that should have been protecting you, decided to sit in silence. Is that where? Tell us why you were so angry. I mean, I'm assuming, but
so in honesty, in hindsight, I can tell you some parts of it, but at that time, I honestly didn't know. And I think that's where some of us are. I mentioned the book earlier, Body Keeps Score, as a point of reference because it talks about how the manifestation of trauma, it's going to come out one way or another. So you can be pushing and pressing and making your way through and, living your best life, if you will, but your body can still physically manifest things or behaviors associated with it. So for me, it was, I think at times it can be illness with some people. Scientifically, studies have shown that individuals that experience, they call them ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. If they go through different types of trauma, not just childhood sexual abuse, that it manifests in different ways physically or different behaviors. And so for me, I definitely would think that what you said is profound. I actually had this conversation with someone earlier during another presentation, was just talking with them about how, often when we prepare for the holidays or gatherings and things of that nature, and we're trying to connect with people that we love, again, you might think like, oh, well, the perpetrator is in the room. The person that abused or violated me is in the room. So that's my qualm. But what about the relative that was complicit in those acts, that sat quiet or silently? So I do know that, like we were saying earlier, this is a healing journey. It's a day-to-day journey. And so for me, that's definitely something that I process regularly in terms of how I interact with, loved ones that knew what was going on, but still said nothing. That definitely can be a great contributor to, or like a prompt for someone's behavior. So I do encourage everybody, if you ever know, I say often during my presentations, who's been in a room and seen the young lady or even the young man that you're like, man, their spirit is just off. Their disposition is, they're sucking the energy out of the room. For everyone, it's not necessarily childhood sexual abuse, but that person is a survivor of some type of trauma, because that type of behavior and disposition doesn't come from, quote unquote, just living. Something has obviously happened. So just extend grace and keep that in mind. This is my 15-year-old self speaking that was voted worst ever. Keep that in mind, when you're interacting with someone. And if you're noticing some of those behaviors in yourself, that's when you want to kind of tap in and figure like, oh, I might need just to talk to someone or think about getting help and figuring out what that looks like for you.
What do you suggest for a person that has experienced childhood sexual abuse but has not addressed it?
I definitely encourage you to address in the way, and you have to figure out what that looks like for you. So I get that everyone's not me. They're not going to get on a platform and publicly tell all their business
Right, right.
or share their story. I totally get that. But for some individuals, they choose to sit down and have conversations with close friends, a partner, a best friend, and they start there with disclosing and then move forward later on with might sharing it with their pastor or a trusted mentor, and even a counselor, a clinical therapist. I always encourage people to explore all those options. Some of those same people that voted me worst attitude sophomore year, I really didn't notice the changes in myself. I knew I was growing, but you don't really see, I understand that you don't really see how much you've evolved until other people start pointing it out to you. And so for me, some of those same people that voted me worst attitude were like, you're so different. What did you do? And I always tell people my personal approach, and this is just my personal approach, it was couch and altar. I was on someone's clinical couch getting therapy, still in therapy, and I embraced my spiritual and faith walk in a different way. So I merged the two to manage the day to day.
Oh my goodness. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, Jocelyn. That right there. Oh, couch and altar. I cannot let you speed past that, because so often in the church we talk about the theological, but we miss the psychological. And let me tell you, listeners, when your life truly changes, it changes when you connect with God, but then you also let God change how you think and how you operate. Romans 12:2 says, "Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, and then you will be able to see God's good, pleasing, and perfect will for your life." So many of us are fighting and struggling to find purpose because we have not allowed ourselves to change how we think. But changing how you think doesn't just happen in the church, it can also happen on the couch. Using people who are trained, who are spirit filled, to help you determine how to deal with what you're going through.
Yes,
Listen.
It's so true. So for me, it was just something that I knew I needed to do, because I knew, in all honesty, for me, a relationship had ended, and I was just like, I'm tired of being mad. I'm tired of being clinically depressed, and I just didn't know what was wrong with me. It was just this cloud of sadness that loomed for periods of time, and I was like, this can't be healthy. In high school, I didn't share. I dealt with suicide attempts, thoughts of suicide, because what happened with the abuse and the trauma, it robbed me, or attempted to rob me, of my identity. And with so much confusion associated with that, I had to clear, like, imagine your life being a field. I had to clear all the weeds, And the thing is, some weeds look like flowers. All weeds don't look like weeds. So often we put up memes and posts and things about that today, and we're talking about people, but it could just be situations and things from our past that have happened. And so for me, clinical therapy, certainly back then when I was intensive therapy and I was going like twice a week when I first started out, I was 28 years old. That was the first time that I actually went to therapy dedicated for trauma, and really just to assess where I was in life, and really just to figure out and put a tap on it. So I, put a pulse on what was happening. So I, like I was saying earlier, I merged the two, and it's so important. People often, and I certainly don't want to offend anyone, but I want to be realistic in my depiction. it's the concept that often when you deal with abuse, because you deal with family members that may have suffered the same thing, they are invalidating in their statements to you by saying things like, oh, just get over it, just pray about it. And those things can be dismissive unintentionally. So important to make sure that you are supportive, even in your words or your reactions, to someone that's a survivor. If they should decide to share and disclose with you, it can make a difference in how they move forward in treatment. So important just to connect in the moment and extend some lane of empathy. And even if you don't have all the answers, sometimes we can do and say so much more in silence, should that be something that comes up. But therapy is such a great tool to help navigate. And it doesn't mean you're crazy. It's a tool to help you manage the day to day, to help you manage certain aspects of your life. And like I said, partnering that with the spiritual is so key. I always refer to the verse in Corinthians that says we labor together with God. People often forget that. And I'm like, it's literally do your part and you're met halfway on the other side. It's spirit and natural. We're not working in silos here. We have to, whatever that looks like for you. At the Unique Foundation, we are not a religious-based organization, but we believe that faith is acting on the fact or the belief that you can heal. So it's all about abandoning your situation, refusing to submit to what the world has handed you, and moving forward, so that, as you said earlier, you can turn that pain into purpose. I love what our phenomenal founder, one of them says, she always says, Shalane Maxfield, she says, we focus on the hope, not the horror of childhood sexual abuse. It's so profound to, even in your day-to-day walk, to stay in that place, because everything that the world brings you or tells you might be something negative, or it may trigger you and remind you of a negative situation, whatever that trauma or abuse that you survived and are working through and pressing through. But it's so important that no matter what you do in life, to focus on the hope and not the horror of the situation.
Jocelyn, we're gonna have to bring you back. This is so good. You said the hope and not the horror. I want to make sure our listeners got that. When you go through pain, when you go through trouble and trials in your life, your focus determines your fruit. Whatever you focus on will determine your fruit. What I mean by that is, if you focus on the hope, fruit will come. The fruit of what? Hope.
Right.
Why? Because that's what you're focused on. If you focus on the horror, then guess what's going to come? Horror. Because we talk about it all the time. Whatever's in your head will end up in your hands. So when you go through a traumatic situation, yes, it is hard. Yes, it is difficult. It's not easy. But with the church and with the couch, you can focus on the hope. And I love what you said about faith. Sometimes we miss that. See, faith is the hope in something that we can't see. We walk by faith, not by sight. And so sometimes I think that when we go through those traumatic situations, because of our lack of faith, we don't have a choice but to focus on the horror. I don't ever think I'm going to get out of this. I don't think it's going to work out for good. So can you tell me one or two things that helps you even now focus on the hope versus the horror?
And you have to gauge where you are, because my answer to this question maybe like a few years ago would have been completely different. But in truth, like now, I have to constantly prioritize self-care. And I say this because, especially with the holiday season coming up, people it's a celebratory time. It's a great time. We want to unite with families, friends, and loved ones. But what we may often do is enter into spaces and places that we don't want to for the sake of fellowship. So for me, self-care means saying no. And sometimes that might be to my mom. And people
explain that, Jocelyn.
So culturally, we're taught it's dishonorable, it's disrespectful, and all of these things if we don't, do whatever our elders say, even as we become whole adults, as they say. But my personal walk has been, and I'll just give you the revelation that God gave me 3 years ago.
Please.
It was, you honor me by honoring yourself. And I was like, because I was just working and toiling when I was director of the HIV program, just doing my best and giving my all, but I was neglecting myself. For a period of time, even in there, I had stopped going to therapy. I don't go as frequently as I used to, but I had just kind of put it off to the side. So it was work at the clinic, ministry, lots of service projects, busy work, and things of great substance to some degree, but was sacrificing self during that process. And so self-care for me, and it's still a ongoing process, amen. I was working on, it's just making it a priority, recognizing that I need to take a moment to journal. I need to take a moment just to take deep breaths. Like the power in the pause, we miss it because we spend so much time on automatic. We think holiday season and we think it's time to shop. It's time to spend more money. It's time to plan a menu out. But sometimes the plan that you should be making might be associated with preparing yourself, not saying that you have to go to events, because you can say no if you don't want to, but say you would like to go, you need to take an inventory of who's going to be there, just so you can gauge how you should prepare your mind, your heart, your spirit. All those things are important to see how you're going to enjoy the event, enjoy the space, enjoy the activity, because is it worth going to that Thanksgiving dinner, that Christmas dinner, if you have a setback in terms of, mentally, emotionally, 3 weeks later? So it's so. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I just want to give people context, because I know that this is a big initiative for you all, keeping the holidays safe for families. So what you're talking about specifically is when you've been sexually abused, trying to make sure that your holidays are safe and secure. Is that what you're referring to with this?
Right. And so like if you've experienced, childhood or adolescent sexual abuse, but it could also, again, like I was saying earlier, be some other type of trauma. So important just to make a plan as you're going into these spaces with people, again, like I was saying, that you likely love and want to be around and experience the fellowship, but just making sure that you're protected when you're going into that. That's one of the things that you maintain. You asked me earlier, like, what's something that you do? Self-care is a priority. For me, making a plan is a key part of that priority. So whether it's a birthday gathering, in the middle of the year, a family barbecue, somebody's baby shower, just a regular Sunday dinner, or Christmas, I have to make a plan, because for me, I have to process, engage where I am, to get a pulse on where I am mentally, emotionally, even if I'm in a good space. How do I want to exchange energy with people? Because it's always an exchange of energy. And so taking inventory of who's going to be, at a particular event, taking inventory of, how long the event is going to last. For sometimes, like I said, sometimes you don't want to go. Sometimes you decide to go and then you want to stay an hour. And that's totally okay. So it's just about doing little bitty things like that. It really is the little things like that, and keeping your boundaries protected, so that you can live a full life and live it well and not just be existing. You don't want to sacrifice your own, not that you won't feel discomfort or uncomfortable at times in your growth, because that's just a natural part of how things go. but you don't want to sacrifice self for the sake of someone else, for sure. In your again, in your healing journey, and we're all healing from something.
I love it. Tell me how we can protect our children from sexual abuse. What are some of the signs? To talk to some of our parents out there.
So one of the main things to do, like the first thing you want to start with, is to educate yourself. It's so key. There are so many myths out there. And I'll just share a few of them. So like some of the myths that we think that the concept that stranger danger is the main thing that we should worry about. I'm an 80s baby. And so there was a huge stranger danger campaign in the United States and other places in the world at that time. And in truth, we likely missed a lot of things with that campaign, in truth, because the statistics show that between 80 and 90% of individuals that are survivors of childhood sexual abuse were violated by someone they know. I'll say that again. 80 to 90% are violated by someone they know. So that means that's either a family member or a trusted family friend or a coach or a teacher or a piano teacher, or just so many different facets, but someone that they know, not a stranger. So erasing the myth of the white van. Right. Not saying that that never happens, but that's not the biggest issue that individuals need to worry about. So I encourage parents and even teens and youth, definitely educate yourself. There's so many myths out there. And when we're living in a digital age, information always occurs simultaneously. Everything is instant. And so we assume, well, it was on YouTube, it was on Google, it was on this. So we think it's some validity to it. But in truth, we have to dig a little deeper, get to some trusted resources, the CDC, your local health department, Georgia Department of Public Health, or your local government public health format, defendinnocence.org, uniquefoundation.org. It's lots of great free tools and resources on our website that provide all different types of situations and scenarios on how to prepare. But getting educated yourself is the first part. And the second one is, and it sounds simple, but it's not happening. Communicate with your children. Talk to your children. If you are a parent, and this is even like a teenager or a small child, the greatest conversation that me and my coworkers that we all have is often a question I ask during my presentations, that it's like a little multiple choice challenge question. And I'll say, what age should you start talking to your children about sex? And the options are like 3 to 5, 15 to 16, 6 to 9, 0 to 2. And every time people always say somewhere between like 6 to 9 and 13 to 15. And 0 to 2 is really the answer. It's not that you're having conversations with your child about sex. You're talking to them about healthy sexual development, healthy development overall from a holistic perspective. So I'll give you an idea. We have these great resources on defendinnocence.org. If you go to the website and just search in the menu bar and type in Little Talks, you can pull up those resources. So there are age-appropriate content that help you have natural, organic conversations with your children. So it's basically prompts on how to do it. So you're not sitting down having the big talk. Research shows that little frequent talks often are a significant risk reducer in a child being sexually abused. And so that's a great way to both educate yourself, but also communicate with your child. So a 0 to 2 little talk is going to talk about things like anatomically correct names of body parts for your child and teaching them the importance of yes and no. That's as far as it goes. And then as a child gets older, it delves into a little bit more detailed and age appropriate content. So the little talk that addresses like 9 to 12 is going to be talking about puberty, body image, and even delves into some social media, because we know normally about that age, that becomes a big part of a child's life. And so
Mhm.
having those regular, frequent conversations with your child about any and everything is going to make it safe for them to feel like they can come to you whenever they have a uncomfortable situation, even when it's one of their peers at school, or a friend, a family member, or a relative. That all of that's really, really important. We definitely don't want to forget that.
That is great insight, Jocelyn. Thank you so much. I put that website on our caption, defendinnocence.org. Please do not hesitate to go grab some resources. That is some excellent insight that Jocelyn has given us. Um, wow, I had no idea that the numbers were that high. And you're right. I mean, you do teach your child stranger danger, but chances are the person that causes the abuse is someone that you allowed your child to be around. It started with trust,
Yes.
and that is something that we need to pay attention to. Can you tell us if those numbers are 80 to 90%, and I believe you wouldn't lead us wrong. What can we do to protect our children from the people they know?
So again, those regular conversations, regular check-ins with your children are going to be so, so important. Having things like family time, dinner with no technology. Everybody put your phones up, put your computers up. Little bitty things that traditionally we've just kind of gotten away of to some degree in the age of technology, can make a difference. Having intentional, regular conversations with your child, whether you are doing it over dinner or simply going for a walk, checking in with them every day and asking how they're doing. It's no shade to my mama, but I'm gonna just tell the truth. She never asked me those questions, but that
Right,
wasn't how she was raised.
right, right.
So it's a situation where once you know better, you do better. But literally just having conversations. My best friend did such a phenomenal job in teaching me how to parent through my goddaughter because I watched her with her affecting everything that we experienced.
Mhm.
You know, making an effort to have intentional conversations with Jalen, telling her to be herself and affirm her, ask her how she's doing, if she was uncomfortable about something, but really just, preparing them, after you go to a family event or activity, after they've been at practice or different things like that, just have a conversation with them and say, like, hey, and I know as they get older, oh my God, so it's like pulling teeth, trying to get a full sentence. You ask them, how was
Right,
everything?
right,
It was
right.
fine. How did that go? It was good. That kind of stuff. But really engaging in conversation. And we have this thing that we recommend where we say, it's like the two good things and the one bad thing. Like explain that wherever you are. This could be after the Thanksgiving family dinner. Like, what was two things you enjoyed today? What was one thing you didn't like? What would
Hmm.
you do differently next year? Or what do you hope
Hmm.
to see next year? So the
I
same,
like that.
yeah, the same can be said of track practice or band practice or football or cheerleading, piano, whatever activity they're involved in, because it gives them an opportunity or a platform, honestly, to feel empowered to share. So often, we teach children, speak when you're spoken to, and kind of set up a lane where they don't feel empowered to share. And so we really want to do our best efforts, because I know it's challenging to maintain a certain level of balance as parents, caregivers, and village members, to give them a voice to share, give them a platform to share, whether it's a regular family meeting, like we were saying, that regular family dinner, having conversation with them, and honor whatever they're saying, because we feel like they don't have bills, they may not have as many stressors as we do. What are they to be stressed about? But in truth, children need self-care as well, because so often, again, whether it's sexual abuse or not, so often we hear these stories about bullying and things of that nature. It's really a situation where self-care is a priority for all children. It truly, truly is. Because I started being bullied at an extremely young age in school. So many things compounded with the abuse and bullied and all this. And not to mention, for a long period in elementary school, I was like, I mean, I know I'm light, but I was still black all day, every day. I was like 10 of, in my class, in my whole school, maybe my whole grade, I was like 10 of, I was one of like 10 to 15 children, in a all white school. So many factors that contributed to feelings of inadequacy. As a young lady, you're trying to figure out your body and navigate all these changes, and nobody's talking to you about that. And again, like the little talks can help with that, but just like engaging in those regular conversations. One thing I want to point out for sure about the holiday thing, like no matter what age the child is, don't force hugs, because that's another thing that we tend to do. Again, unintentionally, we'll sometimes a hug or enforce certain aspects of engagement. You want to teach your child to respectfully decline, but honor their no, because we tell them from a place of consent and communicating boundaries later that your voice matters, blah, blah, blah. When as a child, we've been telling them, go hug Auntie Bobo, go greet Auntie Bobo, and they may not want to. So you, again, unintentionally could plant a seed in a child's head that now I have to do.
You have to show affection.
Right. And I have to do what an adult tells me to do, whether I want to or not, which is how they're more vulnerable to abuse.
That's a good point.
When you force the hug, you don't think about it like that. But I know how I grew up, and it was hug Uncle so-and-so, hug Auntie whomever, and it was like, I really don't want to, but you were like kind of pushed over there to do it for the sake of not being rude. But again, we have to abandon the cultural mindset of a no being dishonorable or disrespectful. It's how you present that no. And so sometimes it's literally no, like, oh, no, thank you. And you might just greet the person and say hello. Sometimes the alternative might be, instead of a hug, you want to do a high five, but it's all about presentation. That's going to make a difference. So teaching our children to, again, be empowered and find their voice, locate their voice at a very early age. Things like consent start with that no for that hug when they're very young, and we don't connect the two. And so that's a really key point that just helps you start. And so again, if I talk to parents often and they're like, well, my kids are grown now, but I can help my kids with my grandkids. And that's a great attitude to have, because it really is about a village. It really is about empowering the entire village.
Let me mention something that I don't want our listeners to miss. We have to empower our children to have power, because so often sexual abuse, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Jocelyn, occurs when that child feels like they don't have the right to say no. This person is my uncle, this person is my dad, or this person is my mom or whatever, and I have to. And what you're saying is, I don't care who it is.
Right.
You don't have to do anything, and you are empowered to protect your body, and don't ever put someone else's self-esteem and confidence before your own. Because so many times we'll suffer and say, well, I don't want to hurt this person's feeling, or I don't want to. No, you self-care starts at a very, very young age. And I think that we have to do a better job of empowering our children with that mindset.
It really, really does. It's like the situation where you just have to watch for all aspects of any potential grooming, and individuals that are perpetrators that would attempt to groom a child. Again, that close family member, that relative, that close family friend, or whomever, they're only going to go for the children that are, traditionally viewed as vulnerable, or, have low self-esteem, obviously are struggling with some of their self-image or things of that nature, because it's easier to some degree to, kind of get them in the groove of whatever they're trying to do. It's normally not a full, it can be at times, but it's normally not a full steam ahead process. It is absolutely a grooming technique where it's little by little, making sure that they're comfortable as they move along in the process. and then ultimately strike,
Yeah.
whatever that looks like, whether it's an inappropriate touch or something more. All of these things are considered abuse. Never compare your story to somebody else's and say, well, oh, I didn't go through this, so what I have to say is not valid. It's not true, because I always say, you never know the storm behind someone's story. And the reason I say that is because what you interpret as your touch might be a tsunami in your life,
Right.
And someone else's, more extensive abuse might be a little drizzle to them in terms of how their mind processes it, how their body processes it. Everybody's journey is different. So you can't play the comparison game. You can't play the comparison game for sure.
Jocelyn, I want to mention something that I think is really, really important for our listeners, and I'd love to know your perspective on this. Just to let y'all know, she doesn't know I'm going to ask this. I'm genuine in how you feel about this, because when you said we've got to, focus on the hope, not the horror. One of the things that comes to mind for me in my own story of losing, those of you, if it's your first time listening, losing both of my parents to AIDS, my father having an extramarital affair with another man, contracting HIV and giving it to my mom. One of the things that I had to do to move out of the horror into the hope was forgive.
Yes.
What has forgiveness looked like for you on your journey, and or is that something you're still dealing with? Share with our listeners.
Sure. So, it's so interesting when you go through stuff and you be like, Lord, there's no coincidence. Because I literally just had this conversation with somebody else earlier.
Oh, wow.
And I was talking about forgiveness. And it's weird. That person was my friend, has been my friend for years, but we had never talked about certain, like, at this level of death. But forgiveness is so, so important, right? And from my perspective, and things I've learned on my journey, from just my personal walk of faith, from every book I've ever read, every couch I've ever laid on, forgiveness is a choice. I'll say it again. Forgiveness is a choice, and it is a daily choice. It is a daily walk where you have to, and you're not dealing with things at the same level or temperament like every single day, but it is a daily choice. The conversation I was just having with my friend was that people have to understand, and we were specifically talking about me dealing with an abuser or someone that violated me, and then having to see them at family dinners, having to see them at birthdays. And I said, I had to, through lots of prayer, counseling, walking, meditating, exercise, the list goes on, lots of different outlets to process what was happening. I had to make a choice to forgive, and I had to come to a different level of understanding about what forgiveness is. We often forgiveness about the other person, when in truth, forgiveness is for you.
Right.
And it looks a lot different than what we anticipate. We're often, or I don't know that we're taught this, or if we just develop the perception of this, but it's misinformation. Forgiveness is not about restoration all the time. It's about reconciliation and coming to a place of peace with a thing. And you aim for it to be perfect peace, but it's a process. So it's reconciliation is what I focus on, versus restoration. If certain relationships are repaired and restored to their former nature, great. But in truth, sometimes the people that you need to forgive, you don't necessarily need to be,
Right.
doesn't need to be restored. So for me, from a place of perpetrators also in sat complicit, it's a daily walk for me. It's literally a daily walk where I just have to extend grace, because I know sometimes I need it, and I look at it from a perspective of people don't always have the tools that they need to make better decisions, make different choices, and then we're all at times, unfortunately, depending on where we are in our mental space, operating in out of a place of fear, through a filter of fear. And so I know that helps at times, because you may not ever get a sorry. I got a half sorry from one of my violators. And so my forgiveness and my choice to forgive, again, is a process, but it's not, I never got a sorry. It's not contingent on their sorry, because
Jocelyn,
you may never get it.
I don't want to lose that this thought, and I want to know your opinion on this. First of all, there's nothing anyone can say that will repair a wrong on the level of sexual abuse. Um, that that being said, at, forgiveness has to be a choice that frees you from the pain, trusting that whoever hurt or harmed you will have to answer to God. And that's why forgiveness is so hard if you're operating in the flesh, because the flesh says revenge, revenge, revenge.
Right.
But those of us who have faith in God know that revenge is the Lord's. So then I'm not expecting you to do or say anything now. That would be nice.
Right. It would be nice.
That yeah, that I mean that and I do believe that you are that person, should have repentance in their heart, and that helps to restore. But because if I know that you've been convicted of your sins, then that helps for me to restore the relationship, because with repentance comes a level of trust that maybe I can't have if you act like you don't believe anything that you've done is wrong.
It's wrong, right? Right.
But I love what you said, because truth is, if I'm going to forgive, I'm going to understand that if it's for me, and that I'm not, by forgiving, I'm not saying that what this person has done is right.
Right.
I'm not saying that I believe that it was okay. What I'm saying is I'm not going to let you get me twice.
Yes.
But because if you hurt me once and I choose not to let it go, I've got to hold on to that hurt for the rest of my life, versus saying, you know what you did was wrong. You know what? I got to forgive you. If I feel like I had something to do with it, I got to forgive me. And I got to leave it at that, trusting that God is going to deal with that person. But I can't allow myself to be held hostage by the hurt you did for the rest of my life.
That's exactly what it is. I described it earlier when I was like, I was in bondage. I literally was in bondage, because you spend so much time angry, bitter, sad, depressed, however it manifests for the individual, because it's different for everyone. For some people, it might be extremely passive, where you retreat all the way and shrink. It's all about making a conscious decision, again, to express said forgiveness, and really developing a strong support system, whether, again, that is a spiritual leader, your pastor, a best friend, a mentor, however that looks for you, making a decision to constantly have a sounding board to help ground you to some degree, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and have an understanding that that your faith walk, your life walk will look different, because you are a survivor of some type of trauma. And it's totally okay and valid and necessary to some degree that you have a different level of support. You need different buffers, more buffers in place than maybe the average person. And that's totally, totally okay. So forgiveness is absolutely for you. But sometimes you get mad, you get pissed off, you do get in revenge mode, and you need to come to a place where you center yourself and allow yourself to recognize that your choice to forgive each day, each hour, each moment, however that looks for you, so often may start with forgiving yourself, but it's making the conscious decision to recognize that forgiveness is for you and not for the other individual. I love what you said about it's not condoning, it's not giving them a pass. You know, so often people will be like, if I forgive you, then I'll let you off the hook. Not true. Again, forgiveness is for you.
Mm-hmm. And a person, you don't have a power to put a person on a hook, and you don't have the power to take them off. You will reap what you sow. And so that goes back to faith and being able to live out the hope as a versus the horror. When I trust in God, and I know that my God is going to work things out for my good, and my God is not going to let somebody, my enemy or somebody that's against me, you know, he may have allowed something to hurt me, but he won't allow anything to harm me. Let me rewind and repeat that. God may allow something that happens in your life. I believe God has two primary wills, a perfect will and a permissive will. Perfect will is how he desires things to happen in our life. A permissive will is things that he may allow to happen because of sin. And that when something goes into the permissive will of God, it would hurt. God allowed my father to have an extramarital affair and contract HIV. He allowed a perpetrator to do something to you that you didn't deserve, and it hurt. But his promise is, I won't let it harm, meaning that some way, somehow, that thing that hurt you is going to help you in the long term. And so I think it's so important for us when we understand that we don't have enemies. We call them enemies, and I even just use that word, but technically, the reason Jesus called Judas his friend is because he knew that even though Judas was wrong, that Judas' betrayal was going to lead Jesus to the best place for him, which was the cross.
There was a catalyst. He was the catalyst. Yeah.
So I'm not gonna hold anything against you if God allows you to betray me, because I believe that my God is powerful enough to allow the hurt that you want to cause in my life, or the harm that you want to cause, to help me. I've got a great question from Tiffany Stokes. Y'all, I know we usually off by 9, but I mean, this is so good. Jocelyn, you have a couple more minutes?
Yeah, I do. I didn't even know.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is so good. Thank you for your grace. I know you're very busy. I want to address this question by Tiffany because I know it's on a lot of our listeners' minds. It says, when is it okay to let the family know? Or do you keep that secret from the rest of your family for the sake of peace? Wow. Woo.
That's a
come on, expert.
So let me be clear. I am not a clinician. I'm not a licensed counselor. I'm an advocate. But I even when I mentor people, I always tell them I cannot make this decision for you.
That's good.
But I can give you some guidance on how you can pursue it. First of all, look at it as a journey itself. Making that decision is something big. Choosing to disclose is powerful. It's courageous. It's a lot of different things, but it's also uncomfortable. It can be sad. So you have to make sure that you're in a space and place where you're prepared to do that. You may want to start with what we discussed on the earlier live was what you may want to do is start with disclosing to one friend, one trusted family member. But I would advise you to, again, back to that, make a plan. And that plan may be made with the guidance, not the instruction, but the guidance of a trusted spiritual leader, your counselor, or whomever. I also want to encourage you to steer away from the word secret. The reason why, because there's a certain shame and stigma attached to it. And so all I'm saying is, I'm definitely not saying you're wrong in that, but because I know how secrets manifest and fester and can destroy. I just encourage you to embrace it from a different perspective, because in truth, we love to say that all of our family members can be trusted and that they, even when they have our best interests in heart and they're going to make the right decision. Like we were joking on the other call earlier saying that sometimes you wish you had the mute feature on family members when they might be out of pocket and say inappropriate things or insensitive things to your situation. But look at it from a place of more so privacy or confidentiality. So not that it's a secret because there's shame attached to it, but it may be a private matter that you may only disclose or discuss certain even headlines or details with certain key individuals in your life. You are not in any way obligated to tell everyone. Like if anybody's family is like mine, everybody knew. Let's be honest.
You didn't have to tell them anything.
People knew. They just didn't talk about it. So that's the secret and shame. So Tiffany, if you're asking on behalf of a friend or whomever, just feel empowered and take back your power in this particular aspect of life, where you see it as this may be a private matter that I only choose to discuss and disclose with certain trusted individuals, because you just, even though they're your family and your loved ones, they don't know how to handle or process certain situations. And so you just have to make sure that you're okay and ready for some of those responses, good, bad, or indifferent. That's extremely going to be important. So having a strong support system, again, getting with those trusted individuals is extremely important to work through that. But give yourself time. Definitely don't rush into that. You don't have to wait until you're old like me before you decide to share. But just definitely make sure that you, again, self-care is the priority. So make sure that you're honoring yourself and prepare yourself as best as you can as you prepare to take that on. It is absolutely not a secret. The shame is on whomever chose to, prey upon you or your loved one. It's all about you being empowered and reclaiming hope, which is what we say at the Unit Foundation, reclaiming hope. Again, focusing on the hope and not the horror is what Shalane always says. And it's so powerful because it's so easy to stay there. But what I always tell individuals that it's totally okay if you have moments of sadness, moments of where you're feeling inadequate because you're still processing what you're healing, whatever you're going through. But just remember that because of who you are, you can't afford to stay there. Like literally the world is waiting on you. So you can't afford to stay there.
I love that. Tiffany, you're welcome for addressing your question. I want to add one thing to that, and I'm going to let you give closing remarks, Jocelyn. I'm sure you got an action-packed day tomorrow, so I want you to. You've been talking about self-care, so I don't want you talking about Pastor Mackey wouldn't let me go. I mean, you ain't gonna put that on me.
I planned
okay.
Activity tonight, so I'm good.
Well, I appreciate you. You've blessed a lot of people. So I want to mention one thing to Tiffany. Tiffany, I want you to pray about what you need to share. I want you to also think about others that you may need to protect. And so often, especially, I know this is probably, every race, but I know Black culture. If y'all can't tell, I'm very Black. We got vanilla and chocolate on here tonight. So listen, so often in the Black family, we say what happens in this house
stays in
this house.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't cover sin. I'm not telling you what to say. I'm not telling you when to say it, but I am saying that you don't feel obligated to protect someone else's perversion at the risk of your own sanity. And so you don't feel like you've betrayed anyone because you feel led to share.
Right.
You worry about, worry is not even the right word. You seek God's wisdom and you pray for his strength on how to do what's best and right for the victims involved.
Right.
And you let the chips fall where they may. Obviously through God's grace, guidance, and wisdom, because I'm no clinician either, but I do know people will hold you hostage because of what they think is best for themselves. This is so sad, but when I wrote my book, everybody was not clapping. Everybody was not excited that, yay, Unique is telling a story. Yay, Unique is getting free of what's held him hostage. I had people saying, why are you talking about this? You're embarrassing the family. You weren't the one that lost both your parents. Matter of fact, you didn't call to check on me. You are worried about your life,
Right.
and you want me to suffer so you can feel free. And
Right.
so often in our families, we hold back what can help us to try to help others. And truth be told, what's best for everybody, I think Jesus said it like this: the truth sets free. And so if you want me to stop speaking truth to help you, I gotta think twice about that. And so, Jocelyn, feel free to correct me if you think I'm offline.
No, I mean, I agree. It speaks to the bondage that I spoke to earlier. It's a certain freedom, and it's hard. Like, so I'm in the process of writing my own book now, and um, I've had to come to a place where I understand that everybody's not going to be happy with what is in the book.
They won't.
But to a degree, it's not to shame or like admonish anyone. It's just me telling my truth, and the truth is that um it's going to make some people uncomfortable, but at the same regard, it's going to provide a level of freedom to certain people that I can shame and try to wait until someone passes away before I tell my truth. I see that happen so often where people won't feel the freedom to share until someone passes away. Meanwhile, their life is held in bondage. And so it's up to the individual. I always say that, but you really do have to prepare. The importance of preparing in every way, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and walking through the aspect of that journey is important. Again, having a trusted support circle, and everyone in your circle will serve a different purpose. But it's so important to have an objective opinion, because so often when we're in these types of situations, we hear our own voice over and over, and we don't get clarity as much as we could. I'll say that anyway, in terms of moving forward, with sharing, with disclosing, with even sharing your story with everyone else. And I'll share very quickly that even from a spiritual perspective, like, I've worked in ministry over the years, and I had an elder in ministry tell me that I shouldn't tell people that I was violated. So sometimes even the church, unfortunately, or any faith-based organization that you might be associated with, will hold you back because of their. And I realized on the back end, this person is really dealing with their own shame attached to whatever their experience may have been, and they projected on me. So it's so important that I'll share from a personal perspective that you have a personal relationship with God, and even who your spiritual father or mother may be, so that you can go there yourself and have those conversations on your own and work through that process for yourself, and then use the other people's as companions and supplements to that, not as the primary. It's so important not to have all those voices in your head trying to serve as the primaries, fighting for attention, but to recognize that we're relational people. We were created to be with and support one another, but it's truly a village where it's supplemental and it can't be the primary. So you are the primary. You are an extension of God. You are an extension of God in the earth. And so you have to fall in alignment with that to figure out what your process is going to look like as you prepare to go forward on your healing journey. That may just start with counseling, spiritual and clinical. And then it might be years later or months later before you decide to share or disclose to someone. Just, be patient with yourself. Definitely have grace, but always maintain that self-care is priority, whatever that looks like. And it's not a one-off. It's not a one-stop shop. No. It is years of saying the same thing to certain family members to get them to understand that you're serious, but allowing your actions to be in alignment with whatever you're saying, so they truly understand like what your boundaries are and whatever process is going to look like for you in terms of you protecting yourself and moving forward. So yeah,
that is good, Jocelyn. Listen, we've taken advantage of you tonight. I thank you for your time. Please tell our listeners, those that are live and those that will be listening later, how they can connect with you. We talked about your book. I want to know what we need to do to support that. Please share with our listeners where they can connect with you and find out when the book drops, so that they can take advantage of that wonderful resource.
Sure. So those things are still like currently in the works and in process, but you can follow me on IG at Jocelyn the Advocate. That's my handle there. I definitely want to. There's more to come, so you'll just have to bring me back when the book
Okay.
drops. That's
Yeah.
what we're going to do.
Hey, that's too easy. That
Right.
is too easy.
But, lots of great resources, healing resources for survivors of childhood sexual abuse, as well as supporters at uniquefoundation.org. And that's unique, YOU, NIQUE foundation.org. So uniquefoundation.org, lots of healing tools and resources there. We provide retreats for women that are survivors, as well as support groups, and other online resources. So again, information for survivors as well as supporters. And then you visit our education arm, defendinnocence.org, to get prevention and risk reduction tools like the little talks that we discussed earlier, to have those age appropriate conversations about overall holistic and healthy development with your child. Just keep the conversation going with children. Their voices absolutely matter. And that starts at a very, very young age. So, give yourself a break as a parent. Adults need villages too. We're all in this together, all figuring it out. And those tools are free and can absolutely on your journey.
Jocelyn, thank you so much for such transparency, for being so strong and faithful. Um, you are proof that God works all things out for good, for you to have gone through what you have gone through, to be such a witness, to be such a key player in such a great organization, to be serving your church and helping ministries like Chosen launch our healing ministry. Kudos to you, sis.
Thank you.
Um,
I'm
Classy is on board.
to be a part of the work. We're all in this together. It really does take a village.
It does, and it takes powerful leaders like yourself to help lead and lift up the villages. So you don't stop doing what you're doing. I got your back.
Same, sir.
We gonna make it happen together, sis. There's a lot of people who need help, and God wants to use our pain to help others find purpose. So um, I'm gonna keep you in prayer. A matter of fact, I've never done this before on Living in Purpose. I feel led just to lift you up in prayer, if that's okay.
Sure.
And listeners, please pray with me as we keep our sister covered as she does such serious ministry. Dear Heavenly Father, I just want to thank you for Jocelyn. I want to thank you for being with her, helping her turn her pain into purpose. Father, I want to pray that she gets all the physical and financial resources that she needs, that your favor, grace, and mercy will be shown to her through everyone that she comes in contact with. God, that she won't grow weary in good doing. It's such difficult work she's in the midst of. But I believe you've called her to this. You've created her for this. And I just pray that she will walk and not get weary, that she will run and not faint, that you'll continue to open up doors that she can go through, close the doors that she's not meant to go through. I pray that her book launch goes exceedingly abundantly above all that she could ask or think. And I just pray that you continue to help her be happy and satisfied with the work that comes from her hands. Keep her healthy, safe, all those that she loves. Keep them healthy and safe. I pray that you get all the glory and she gets all the good. And that's in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you. You let me know what you need, and we'll be in continued support for you. Okay, y'all share this. It's somebody. She said that is 1 out of 4 that have experienced sexual abuse, and those are only the reported cases. So if you have 1,000 Facebook followers, there's 225 of them most likely who have experienced sexual abuse. You need to share this so that we can protect our young people. Thank you again, Jocelyn. Everyone have a great night.
You're welcome. Have a good night.